Ian, tell me the story of Ed Catmull.
Ed Catmull is one of the founders of Pixar, and he's a fascinating guy. It's a really good book I recommend, Creativity Inc. By him, president of Pixar Animation. And Ed talks about an experience he had, David, in his childhood when he was in a car with his family, and there was a crash, and they were okay, obviously. But Ed Catmull tells the story that if the car had been 2 inches to the left, it would have gone off the edge of the cliff, and there would be no Catmull family, and there would be no Pixar. And he talks about the 2-inch event. That was a 2-inch event, and our lives are full of 2-inch events, good and bad. And I love that sense, David, because it speaks to my own love of randomness and serendipity and these little opportunities that come our way that you just reach for, and you're so close to them, and you might not know they're there. It's the story of how we got published. A long story involving a eurythmic. We'll tell that another time, maybe. All these lovely random stories. Our lives are full of them, and I just love that notion, the 2-inch event.
And we're going to touch on some of those during this recording now. I just want to throw something in here first, Ian, before we unpack that a bit further and look at some of those events, is that we're living in challenging times. I won't use the word unprecedented, even though I just used it, because I believe everybody is now using that to describe our times. And they're talking about the new normal right now. And as you know, last week I went on a news fast, so I didn't take any news inputs for a whole week. And I'm a firm believer in that what goes in starts to influence what comes out. If I pour alcohol into myself, we can be pretty sure a drunk David comes out, whether I like it or not. So I wanted to tune into the news this morning and listen to what's going on. Obviously, the news pundits cast a very negative picture of our world. That's what sells newspapers, fear and consume, whatever that news channel is, whether it be a paper, which I don't believe many of us are buying anymore, especially now. And so this whole idea of fear and consume, so I put the news on very negative, and it would lead one to believe that there are no opportunities out there anymore. The world has closed down. There is nothing there for you. It's all over. It's a sorry state of affairs. And the reason I'm bringing this up, because you talked about being, or Ed talking about being 2 inches. The difference between success and failure being, for him, life and death was 2 inches. The opportunities are just sometimes 2 inches away. And that's what we'll unpack soon, is some of those opportunities that have come along that were 2 inches between being on and off. And the reason I'm bringing up about the news now, is about the mindset. If we are focused, if what is going in is that negativity, and that's the only thing that's informing us, then those 2 inches are going to pass us by, and we are not going to see them. And we're going to say, I didn't ever get the chance. I didn't ever have the opportunities. No one told me this. Well, they did, but you couldn't hear it, because all we can hear is what's going on around us, what we're inputting. That's informing our decisions. That's informing our attitudes. That's informing our beliefs. So I'm not saying turn off all your news channels and become a hermit. I'm saying be aware that there is a lot of possibilities in this world, and there always will be. There is an abundance, it is a growing universe, and we're aware of that. So don't shrink inwards. Get that radar up now and say, I'm going to be aware that there are opportunities out there, and I'm going to tune myself to listen for them. Because Ian's going to tell us about his experiences, and David's going to tell him about their experiences, and you're going to think of your own that were 2 inches away from never happening. Amazing things. Ed talks about 2 inches away from no Pixar. When you said that, I just imagined for a moment a life without angle poised lamps. Would just be boring, wouldn't they, if it wasn't for Ed? They would be now. I can't look at an angle poised lamp without imagining it jumping up and down on the letter I. Yeah, we need that fun, that playfulness, that amazing, and we need to make sure. My point is, make sure that we don't pretend it doesn't exist just because everyone wants to sell us more stuff by telling us none of the opportunities exist anymore. They do. They always have. They always will. So let's kick in with other two-inch events that have happened in our life for now. So let's talk about the difference of being 2 inches away from success, how close it's been. And you touched on it. You know, there's our own publication of Zoom, the faster way to make your business idea happen. That serendipity, I mean, that was just so close to never being.
That involved a Icelandic volcano, yeah, and one half of Eurythmics walking up Wardour Street. I mean, that was a story of, and I feel a story of all our lives, a story of me walking up a street in Soho in London and seeing Dave Stewart, one half of the Eurythmics, me getting to a cafe. So that was the first thing. I happened to cross a street and I happened to see Dave Stewart walk towards me. I happened to go to a cafe. My friend wasn't there yet. I happened to open Twitter and think, I'll tweet Dave Stewart. Dave Stewart happened to be sitting in a coffee shop in Soho, happened to respond to that tweet. Dave Stewart happened to be stuck in London because there was an Icelandic volcano that had closed European airspace. And I should say, I'd already had a dialogue going with his office a few months before. I wasn't this stranger that suddenly came into his life. But that did result in a meeting, that did result in me connecting with him on LinkedIn, that did result to the editor of one of his books following me on LinkedIn, that did result to her sending an email saying, you look interesting. Do you want to write a book? That book was what we both wrote. So that's kind of the short and condensed version. And as I preface it, you know, these are the story of all our lives. You're right, David, because your starting point on all this is it's all about mindset. It's like that movie Sliding Doors, right? I might have not crossed the street and bumped into Dave Stewart. I might have thought, oh, the last thing Dave Stewart wants is someone tweeting him. He's too important for that. I better not tweet. All these little things that acting on, taking action.
Yeah.
I think we're talking about opportunity. We're talking about all the opportunities that might be out there. And there's only one way of finding if those opportunities are going to come off or not. It's having a positive mindset, but it's acting on it. It's taking action towards that. And taking action comfortably that, all right, it might hit a brick wall, but at least I pursued that. Otherwise, we sit back, don't we? We sit back in our lives and go, well, I never know whether that might have come off or not because I didn't reach out on that business opportunity. I didn't reach out and ask that person for advice. I didn't reach out and go to my local council, see if I was eligible for that grant. I could start a little coffee stand when we can have coffee stands again. So it's a mindset plus being action oriented, isn't it? Well, I mean, both of those are mindset. It's about optimism and it's about action.
Doing is so important, and we've talked about this a lot. In fact, the whole premise of the book Zoom was about business doing. Our idea of, and we talk about unplanning, isn't about muddling through life with no direction. It's about saying, okay, I can only see as far as I can see, and I can only plan as far as that, and things may happen. And if I become rigid and refuse to adapt, then my plan's going to break anyway. But if I'm happy to be agile, maybe make several scenario plans out, the short term, that show me how I could work through this, then I'm much more likely to get through it. But our biggest pain for us that we were seeing was lots of startups talking to us about their business ideas and then talking to us about these 5-year plans. And when we'd say, how much effort have you put into that 5-year plan? There was some that spent years, right? Years planning. We said, what if you just did something? What if you started doing some doing? And that is a very different mindset. And you're absolutely right, Ian. There is one way of thinking things, and that is about, okay, I'm going to have a positive attitude. I'm going to work hard on that muscle. I'm going to push against the negativity and look for the opportunity. But then when it presents itself, there's going to be this moment of do or do not do. And we feel it all the time. And the fear of doing, will it outweigh the regret of not doing? You will never know. But the fear of doing is usually, in reality, a much smaller easier to manage, and often there's a fear that we didn't need to worry about. As my mum used to say, don't worry twice. Do it. If it all goes horribly wrong, worry about it then. Yeah. But if you've got a good in, you think you can take the opportunity, and like Ian said, should he be worrying about contacting Dave Stewart? Dave Stewart's one after the Rhythmics. Oh my gosh, what if he says, go away, stop stalking me? All these fears that turned out to be, none of them were true. And I'm not saying you had those fears, but we all carry that opportunity within us, don't we, to have that?
Of course, yeah.
Fears. So action speaks louder than words. Do. When the opportunity is there, you're going to think it through strategically. You're going to do that anyway. You're going to have some kind of micro plan of how you're going to get to the next point, or does it fit in with your bigger aspirations and dreams? But ultimately, don't let fear put you off doing.
Absolutely. I think there's another way that mindset plays out, David, which is kind of like reframing the question, which is, sometimes we can be fearful of not knowing what's around the corner. I know some of the people I've been coaching in my coaching calls recently have been very worried about what's next, and I can't change their landscape for them, but I can help them shift their mindset of how they're reacting to that landscape. I can't paint them a new landscape. I can't get my brushes out and paint them a new landscape because the landscape is the landscape. How they deal with that landscape and reframing and shifting fear and, oh my God, what am I going to do, into let's go on a journey of discovery and exploration. What relationships and opportunities can I nurture in order to rebuild my business from this? And I'll be honest, this is a process I've gone through myself. And I think we talked about this in an early episode. This is a process I talked about myself. I'm shifting from fight or flight and panic to calm, confident. This is a place that I'm going to build from. And that is the mindset that's got me through here. Otherwise, I'd be saying to you, look, can we cancel our Unplanners recording this morning? Because I really need to think about what business I've got next month. And I am, we can only rebuild from a period of calm and confidence. So I know we keep on banging on about mindset, but it's mindset. As soon as you do the doom and gloom, then you'll go in a pit and you won't be able to climb out of that.
So this landscape that you're talking about is a landscape of opportunity. And if you are focusing, this is what you're saying right, Ian, if you're focusing on the negative, then you're not going to see the opportunity that may be 2 inches away. All of us are going to have an opportunity that passes us by in the next year, probably in the next 6 months, probably in the next 3 months. A huge, positive, life-changing opportunity is going to move within 2 inches of us all. 2 inches away. Yeah? Could be today. It could be at the end of this week. It could be a month away, but it's going to happen. The question is, are you ready to step those 2 inches forward and take it? Or will fear hold you back? Will panic hold you back? Will what if hold you back?
Can we make that a bit more real for people? Can we make that a bit more real? Because it can feel a bit abstract, doesn't it? How do we actually reach forward for those 2-inch events that we might think, well, hang on a minute, someone's listening to this, how do I shift my mindset to be aware of these things and be open to these things?
Repetition. If you only think of the negative, if you only focus on what's wrong with the world, if you only focus on what's wrong with yourself and your partner and your family and your work colleagues and the business you work for, if you only focus on the negativity around those things, that is the muscle you will build. It will become strong. You'll become really good at it. You'll become the best until they let you go because they can't stand you anymore. Equally and oppositely, you can work on the positive side. You can work on what is good about yourself, what is good about the world, what is good about the company you work for, what is good about your family and your friends. And repetition. Wake up every morning and be grateful for 2, 3, 4 things. Now, that's not too much to ask, is it? bit of gratitude for the good things you have, that is a positive start to your day. Even if you woke up tomorrow morning, said, I'm going to be grateful for one thing as soon as I wake up. That's all I'm going to do tomorrow. The other thing is, of course, exercise. Get that serotonin flowing. And that's another way you can do it. And whilst you're exercising, do an exercise in gratitude at the same time. Give thanks to people who have given things in your life. And they could be people that have you felt at the time held you back, but actually unlocked the biggest opportunity. The best things that ever happened to me in my career was being fired. They turned out to be life-changing, painful, and door-openingly brilliant. And I'm sure you've got a few tales of your own. So in answer to your question, it's think of positivity like a muscle. That if you don't do any exercise, if you don't push against something that is too heavy, is too stiff, then the muscle doesn't get a workout. Yeah. So you've got to exercise it. I
like that. And certainly that mirrors my own experience. I think the other thing, and we talked about that before, the gratitude and everything else. I think the other thing, we have talked about this as well, haven't we, is kind of going with your gut. I kind of feel, as I look at my photograph, a video of me here, that we've got all these things that might be flying around in the ether, like kind of waves, and some of those are opportunities. And it's like, well, we're 2 inches away from them, how do we get them all? And isn't some of that maybe about kind of going with your gut, reaching out to someone when you've got a feeling? I don't want to sound too spiritual about it. I'm not that kind of person. But sometimes I do feel I've had experiences, and I'm just trying to think in the last couple of weeks when there was someone really senior in a big organisation, big global organisation I wanted to build a relationship with, and I just persevered, and I just reached out to him, and it worked, and I've now struck up a digital conversation and communication with, and if I kind of rewind to the moment I did that, it was probably a 2-inch event. It could have gone either way. It wasn't like, here on my list today, you must do this. It was kind of like, I was probably doing something else, or I might be listening to a podcast or taking the dog for a walk. And I thought, oh yeah, I must, why not give him a try? I know I could. And I had some words in my head as I was doing that. And I thought, oh yeah, I'll just reach out to him out of the blue. He's never heard of me, and see what happens. And I think isn't sometimes the mindset and the action oriented also mixed with kind of going with your gut or going with your feel about something? Absolutely. And it's funny, the way you were almost apologetic about saying I went with my gut. Like there's something wrong with going with their gut. If you hung that on a scientific lattice work, you just say, look, the brain runs on heuristics. It can't possibly make decisions based on all of the information, because it would spend a lifetime either gathering it, or there would just be analysis paralysis. One of the two would happen, right? Yeah. So it has to work in heuristics. Heuristics, rule of thumb. It has to carefully navigate through the path of least resistance. That's gut. That's your gut telling you, yeah? The path of least resistance to an opportunity right now is to just contact that lady. And you know what? The words are forming in your head to make it easier to happen. So acting quickly, trying to remain positive through repetition, and going with your instincts, what your lifetime of accumulated knowledge inside the most powerful computation machine, biodiverse machine in the universe that we certainly know of. Leverage that. And if it's saying to you output equals, then if there's no huge risk, if it's not going to put your family and your home at risk, then why not make that reach out? It's easier to make an excuse for not doing it, of course. It's always easier to run a narrative. Oh yeah, but I read somewhere that she doesn't answer personal email. It's easy to create a negative narrative, but that's coming back to that mindset of saying, I hear that negative voice, but that negative voice has got strong because of the inputs, things I think about, the things that are coming in. You can step in and interrupt it. It's your computation machine. It's your brain. You own it. You could step in and say, I hear that voice,
not going to fight it. I'm just going to say, I hear that voice, but I'm not going to act on that voice. I'm going to ask myself, what positive could come out if I did send that email now that I feel I should send? Well, it could open up and start imagining what could happen. And go, well, that's a much better outcome. Let's go for it and see what happens. Because the things we focus on are the things that generally start to move towards us.
And that feels, for me, that feels much more effective, and that feels much more me than if I had on my pinboard behind me, 20 things to do, and one of those was to contact that lady, because
Yeah.
but because in your wonderful way you give me the science behind the brain, the way in which that was delivered from my subconscious into my conscious felt so much stronger, and also I'll use the word random, that it was kind of like, oh yeah. And that's why I think of that as a 2-inch event. It wouldn't be a 2-inch. If I put it on there as an action point, oh yeah, I haven't done that yet. It wouldn't have the same magic. When that kind of comes into there and it's like, oh, that's completely random. And like a lot of people, my showers are full of those kind of moments. I had one last week, I can't remember what there was now, but I remember saying to Zoe, oh my God, I had like 4 really strong ideas, just from being in the shower. And I acted on them because they had that thing about how they made me feel. The same way about reaching out to that lady in a big global organization. Why don't I just give it a go? I might build a relationship with her. And it had something about how it made me feel. It made me feel like I want to do this. It's a bit random. And I kind of I almost get off and get a high from the fact that, well, like I don't want to mix metaphors. We call it a 2-inch event. Icelanders call it blink and you'll miss it. Blink and you'll miss it. Very nearly didn't. And when you then get hired by that company and go, yeah, how did you start working together? Yeah, it's just I was walking the dog and had a thing, and I don't know. I felt I should act on it, and here I am. And I think, yeah, after you.
That's really interesting, Ian, because you touched on something that in business we've seldom talk about. And that is getting a massive endorphin hit, a massive high, great big buzz from thinking of something, right? And it's rare that you can walk into the boardroom and say, I thought of something and it just made me feel like, hugely, I just felt great. We don't do it. But that, again, if you're listening to this, if you're watching this and you're thinking, well, I don't get any of that kind of feeling, it takes effort. Do it once. Do it twice and start recognizing it, and it's real. I have exactly the same. I could go for a run. I could be standing in the shower and I have those ideas. You've got to be able to capture them. If you've got Google Home, add it to your shopping list. That's why I just shout for Google to add it to my shopping list. And then they're all there when I come out, all those random ideas. And that feeling you get, that's a very powerful feeling, because and that's emotion coming through. And I've said before, that's your E engine, your E for engine creates motion, emotion. It drives you forward. It gets you in the doing. Ideas that are dull, uninteresting, negative, poorly thought through, they don't drive you emotionally. They don't drive the engine. They don't make you get up and go, hell yeah, and go out and do something.
Yeah.
But those others that you're talking about, those ones that have come to you and you get that feeling, that gut feeling, that intuition, that brain saying, I've got a path of least resistance to success staring at me right now. Are we going to act on it, yes or no? But then the negative mindset can come in and go, yeah, but you then got to address that and go, I hear you, negative mindset. I hear you. And I'm going to not do as you asked today. I'm going to take my own path today. I'm going to go with my brain's intuition.
That's what unplanning is really about for me. That's the unplanned life. That's how I navigate it, tuning into those things in order to make decisions and to make the most of opportunity of those little 2-inch events. And then
within the opportunity, you can create a plan. So then you can say, well, I need this, how am I going to communicate with this particular lady? How often should I follow it up? If she replies to me, how long should I leave it before replying? What should I put in there? What am I looking for as a goal out of this? What's the big objective here? And then you can start to imagine a plan to get there.
Yeah. One of my biggest, commercial opportunities in the first 10 years of my independent life was a massive project for Benetton. And that opportunity started when I had a conversation with someone at Benetton when I was running an in-store radio channel for them. And because David and I both worked in radio, and I had a few contacts, and I put that together. And a guy at Benetton in London on a Tuesday morning said, "Can you introduce me to an ad agency? I'd like to run an ad in the Evening Standard on Thursday." And I went out and stood on the pavement outside that Benetton office and phoned someone that ran an agency. And I went, and I was excited for him. I said, "Do you want to work with Benetton?" He was like, "What do you mean, do I want to work with Benetton?" I went, "I've got an opportunity for you. They want to run an ad in this Thursday's Evening Standard. And they've got a global agency, but they haven't got anyone that can do that for London Evening Standard." And he said to me, "Well, we couldn't do something this week. Get them in for a meeting next week, and we can, put a proper plan together, media plan, understand what their objectives are, and, put an ad campaign together." I went, No, you don't understand. They want to put an ad in this Thursday." He said, "Well, it doesn't work like that, Ian. That's not how advertising works." Well, I went away from that, and I thought I didn't want to call back my guy that I just had a meeting with and say I couldn't help him. So I said, well, I didn't say it immediately, I must admit. I waited till I got home. I took the bus home to where I was living in Barnes, just southwest London, and I made a few phone calls, and I figured that actually I could do this myself. I had to risk quite a lot of money because no one had ever heard of me. So as soon as I went to a media buyer, I said I wanted an ad in the Evening Standard. They went, "We never heard from you, so you have to pay for it up front." So I had to risk a few £1,000s of my own money. And I called up a couple of graphic designers that I knew, and we did an ad, and it worked. We got away with it, and continued doing that for 18 months. And that certainly wasn't on my plan. That wasn't certainly the rules of how it worked. You shouldn't, the ad industry said, well, we can't suddenly go from no working relationship to putting an ad out 72 hours later. But I did it, and I think that was driven by being entrepreneurial, being opportunistic, having a mindset, and also kind of being naive in a good way, being ignorant and go, I don't know that world. You've worked in marketing and advertising. I don't know that world, so I won't approach with those preconceptions. I'll be naive and go, well, hang on a minute. All I actually need is we need the ad created, and I need a media buyer to buy the thing in the Evening Standard. And I went out. That was when you had to buy the Evening Standard. I went out and bought it on the Thursday lunchtime. I was like, oh, there's the ads. We did that, and it wasn't that painful. I had to queue up in Barclays Bank in Putney High Street and to transfer $5,000 or whatever it was of my own money. I didn't even have myself set up as a separate bank account. It's my personal money paying for it. But I only tell that story because that was a 2-inch event, and I remember standing out on the pavement. I can see myself now making that call to that guy. Do you want to work with Benetton? Hell yeah. But you've got to work with them like right now. Roll your sleeves up, make it happen. No, it doesn't work like that.
2 inches away, 2 inches between success and not having that gig for yourself. Yeah. And the easiest thing in the world would have for you to follow the narrative of, yeah, but it's not done like that. My friend told me in an advertising agency, it's not done like that. I believe it's not done like that, so I can't do it like that. And I bring this point up, Ian, because the language around at the moment, as we're recording now, is the new normal. Yeah. So that means the old normal is broken. So that means when that narrative says, yeah, but we don't do it like that, comes up, okay, yeah, we didn't do it like that, but this is a new normal. So maybe we can. And the only way I can find out if I can is to start leaning into it by doing. Ian could have said, no, that's it's not done that way. Equally, he could have gone, well, it's £5,000. That's too big a stake of a risk. There's 101 reasons Ian could have passed it by. But what he did do was bag himself a global brand as a client and had an advertising agency, the envy of most, right? Like that. You're in a two inches of movement, and he had an advertising agency that, okay, you got your sort of top 100 agencies out there. You weren't in that category yet. All those below it, you just let past them with a bigger client. And you didn't even have a company bank account. You're in there with your personal checkbook. You're going, can I write a check for myself to transfer some money? And the old clerk rubber stamping it, coming in. And that was the worst. And I did the same when I walked into a meeting and I talked to Yahoo about a project, and you reminded me of this. And I was just spitballing really about what they could do as an idea. And they said, you know what? Do it. We'd love you to do it. You sound like the kind of guy that could do that. We'll transfer the money over to your account to fund it. And there I was giving them my personal Halifax.
I love it. It's the same
savings account. Yeah, just put it into my personal account. I haven't got a business set up or anything to do this. I've got no infrastructure at all.
Put it into your child's saver account you'd had since you were a kid. With a little,
that's an instant saver. That's right.
The one with the little Winnie the Pooh passbook.
I've had this account since I was a baby. It's a good job it was. I didn't have a Winnie the Pooh, but I know we're going on a tangent a bit, but back to that point. Yeah, they're talking about new beginnings. I don't know how much is really going to change when we can all fly again. Everyone's sort of saying, as soon as you can get on a plane, is everyone going to say, I don't fancy flying anymore? But this, in the context of where we are now, they're talking about the new normal, which means when that narrative says to you, yeah, but that's not how it's done. We didn't used to do it like that. Well, you've got an argument back to that mindset now to say, well, we're in a new normal now. So I have permission to do things differently.
That's a really good point. I think that's a really good point. That takes that away as an excuse. I'm in a different landscape. And, I've been playing around with this language for 20 bloody years, all the new world of work. I had a blog in the early noughties called The Scrambled Up World of Work. It's really scrambled up now, right? This is really scrambled up now. Now we have no excuse. You're right. We don't do things that way. We don't do things the way where, I say to my friend, oh yeah, I'm just going out for my daily exercise. What? When did we ever think that was what we were doing in the 2nd of May, 2020? So you're right. I think, that is the light it up in neon. Things are different. Flash, 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 flash. Gives us license to be curious. Gives us license to be opportunistic. Gives us license to go, you know what? I feel this is a 2-inch event. I've got a feeling about it. The endorphins are going. I am going to wing it. Winging it, blagging it, does not mean not doing a proper job. It's the spirit of it, right? You talked about that on episode 1 or 2. I can't remember. What used to be called sloppy is now called MVP, minimal viable product. This is all the mindset of trying and acting and giving it a go. The worst thing that could have happened is no one have taken me seriously at Evening Standard, media buyers, and I never got an ad. So what? I'd given it a try. I'd phoned back and said, I gave it a try. I can't do it. And it would have been dead. So fine. That's all right, isn't it? No one died. So, it's all about that mindset. It's all about getting on with that. And I think you're right. That whole thing about we are in a different way. We can't say, oh, that's not the way it was done. So if you spot an opportunity or there is a way of delivering something which feels a bit different, we now have a license to be different and to light that up in neon.
No excuses.
No excuses. I love that. Well, look, I think that's a nice time to reflect. We always do what we both learned from this. What I wrote down here was about the endorphins thing, David. What I love talking to you is I love how you give me kind of the science behind things, and I love the thing about I'm always aware of how that feels when I'm excited, when I'm ignited, when I feel fired up, and I know to act on that. And you've given me some sense of the endorphins and what's happening there. And I think you talked about behaviour being repetitive, and I know from my own experiences, when I get excited like that, it is a sign. It's a sign to do something and to act on something. And I'm going to keep on exercising my muscle to keep on getting the endorphins flowing.
And I've learned from you, Ian, that opportunity is always so close, passing so close. And I'm going to be more mindful and take time to observe those opportunities. And if the feeling, if the desire, if it's a burning desire, and I have faith I can do it, and I believe I can make a plan to make it happen, and I'll carry on with persistence to see it through, then I'm going to act on it.
Great. That was episode 7 of the Unplanners. See you next time. Thank you very much.